Many women dream of such a life, owning their own company, being worth billions, dating celebrities, and staying fearless even when caught by Uncle. She even instructs her assistant to show off her bag and gestures in the photos. With this approach, she completed the annual sales target 6 months ahead of schedule, living in the spotlight every day. If asked whether she dreams of marrying into a wealthy family, she would confidently reply, "I am the wealthy family." This isn't bragging. She really is the epitome of South Korea's top elite. At today's family gathering in a luxurious estate, a wealthy family with no love lost, endlessly scheming for power. Her father's expression shows he sees through it all. So when his daughter returns without any fanfare, he announces her as the new CEO of the group. But she's not just about making money, she's also into extreme sports. She's the model of a well-rounded modern woman. However, as the saying goes, life is unpredictable, and trouble soon comes. It arrives on a tractor and a bicycle. After a bizarre twist of events, she ends up hanging from a tree, taking out her signal-less phone to furiously scold her assistant. Little does she know, a soldier is watching her from afar. She curses at her phone in frustration, then softens and mutters before ultimately slumping in defeat. Seeing she's not a threat, the soldier lowers his gun, smirks, and watches her emotional display with amusement. Then she notices the man under the tree. The soldier, now serious, raises his gun and cautiously approaches. She waves but soon realizes something is off. It's a North Korean uniform. The man chambers around and orders her to come down immediately. She hurriedly unfastens herself, but the chair loses balance and she falls straight into his arms. In my opinion, the timing was just perfect. She quickly explains why she's there, and the soldier finally understands, putting away his gun. However, he insists she accompany him for an investigation. What? An investigation? She instantly imagines all sorts of tortures, spikes, chilly water, and more. The soldier warns her there are mines in the water. Calmly, with his hands behind his back, he boasts that only an expert like him can safely navigate through. Yet in the next moment, he steps on one, and his phone falls into the water. Now, the tables have turned in her favor. Finally, she uses her phone to negotiate a proper escape route. But just before reaching the exit, she decides to trust herself after all. The more he chased her, the faster she ran, heading in the wrong direction. Finally, she stepped on a tree blown over by the wind and climbed over the border's high-voltage fence. The guards on duty were either watching dramas or reading letters in the grass, and no one noticed her. After running into the forest, she unfortunately injured her leg, but that wasn't the worst of it. She got lost. Eventually, she stumbled upon a village, but something about it felt strange. As soon as the loudspeaker blared, everyone started doing group exercises, and the children lined up neatly to go to school. She was utterly confused, thinking she might have wandered onto a movie set, until she spotted a large banner. That's when she realized she was in North Korea. At that moment, a military vehicle approached. If she were discovered, it would be over for her. A flash of light appeared, and a shadow pulled her into a courtyard. It was him. Relieved, she started calculating in her mind. He was the only person she knew here, and perhaps he could help her escape. She immediately switched into charm mode. She assumed the man was mesmerized by her beauty, but in reality, he was debating whether to execute this suspicious woman on the spot. In the end, he decided to let her stay and even made her some noodles. Ever cautious, she told him, "In South Korea, there's a custom where the host eats first." The man stared at her and replied, "Do you think I'm an idiot?" Embarrassed, she put her spoon down. The man still doubted her identity, so she quickly revealed her status as a wealthy heiress, warning him that her disappearance could lead to conflict between the two countries, or even intervention from the United Nations. However, no matter how much she promised rewards or told stories to sway him, the man remained unmoved. Then, there was a knock at the door. A squad of soldiers arrived, and she finally realized that her crossing into the border was due to their negligence, a serious offense. She quickly took the upper hand, demanding they send her back home. She even made a list of demands, starting with eating meat. After eating her fill, the man prepared to return to his unit. He told her that if she encountered any emergencies, she could call him. While the man grew increasingly annoyed by her antics, she finally managed to boil some water and take a bath. However, just as she finished, the power went out. While other households lit candles, her place remained in complete darkness. While searching for candles, she heard a noise outside the window. Frightened, she hid behind the curtain, holding a vase and standing by the door, ready for whatever approached. When the figure stepped closer, she saw it was the man returning. Seeing her in tears, the man handed her the candles she'd been looking for. The man, unsure how to comfort her, decided to leave for his next task. Before departing, he handed her a bag. She ran out to ask for his name, but he didn't answer, knowing they'd never meet again after this. Back inside, she opened the bag to find it full of items he had shyly bought for her: body wash, shampoo, and even undergarments. She could imagine how awkward it must have been for him. Most touching of all was the bottle of disinfectant. He had remembered her injury. However, this kind-hearted man was taken away as soon as he got off the train. She was discovered and became the laughingstock of the village. She was even held at gunpoint until the handsome officer claimed she was his fiancée to protect her. When the village women heard that their ideal man had a fiancée, they crowded outside his door, eager to see which lady had stolen him away. To everyone's surprise, she walked out herself. The officer's mother questioned her identity, but with a sharp look and a few clever remarks, she left them speechless, forcing them into awkward laughter. Her final icy glare shut the door in their faces. However, the village women weren't so easily conceived. They muttered that she wasn't even pretty. What? In her vocabulary, there was no such thing as not pretty. The anger radiating from her could be felt even by the officer. The next day, she stood waiting at the door, determined to accompany him out. She wanted everyone to see her clearly. Being called not pretty was unacceptable. As they stepped outside, she forced him to act classic romantic drama scenes. First, the girl gently brushed dust off the guy's shoulder. Then, the guy affectionately fixed the girl's hair. Next, the girl playfully pounded her fists on the guy's chest. Finally, they exchanged a reluctant, teary goodbye. Their over-the-top performance left the villagers stunned. She, however, wore a triumphant smile. That night, she was preparing to leave. To thank everyone, she organized an awards ceremony. Though there were only 6 people present, she turned it into an event worthy of the Oscars. She handed out random awards while the officer stood by, smiling at the chaos. But when she reached the Most Handsome award and gave it to someone else, the officer was visibly displeased. Even the person he disliked the most received a prize. His face grew darker by the second. Yet, with her experience managing people, how could she possibly mess this up? She used a bag of potatoes to trade for a single tomato seedling for Jung-hyuk, which finally calmed him down. That evening, they boarded a fishing boat to attempt an escape. However, it wasn't long before a patrol team launched a surprise inspection at sea, forcing them to hide in the cabin. The boat captain handled the situation calmly above deck, but inside, she was panicking. Jung-hyuk told her, "If it doesn't work, use one of those Korean secret tactics of yours. Come." At that moment, the patrol captain opened the cabin door. After checking their documents, the captain grumbled, "What kind of late-night fishing trip is this?" The captain, flustered, let them go, but ordered them to return immediately. She could only watch as the boat meant to take her home sailed further and further away. Back in the dark alleys, she sought comfort from Jung-hyuk, but as a straight-laced Iron Man, he didn't know how to console her, leaving her so frustrated that she spun in circles on the spot. The next morning, still angry, she left a note and disappeared. She decided that she would return to Korea the same way she came, regardless of the consequences. Broadcasting her location through a radio transmitter, she prepared to set out. Just as she was about to leave, Jung-hyuk arrived and, seeing the transmitter, quickly warned her, "Once they detect suspicious signals, the investigation team will be here in under 10 minutes. Sure enough, soldiers were already approaching from the mountain. In a split-second decision, Jung-hyuk grabbed her and jumped off the cliff. Holding each other tightly, they drifted far away. By the time the investigation team arrived, they were long gone. Returning to the village, she complained that Jung-hyuk's lack of effort was the reason she couldn't return to Korea, completely unaware that he was the son of a high-ranking North Korean official. On another front, she heard that the general could help Jung-hyuk with his promotion, so she decided to curry favor with the general's wife. She attended the wife's birthday party, and the wife, showing her respect, gave her a seat of honor beside her. A few sweet words from her made the wife beam with delight, but others mocked her for showing up empty-handed. Quick-witted as ever, she grabbed a gift that someone else was too shy to present, swiftly altered it, and transformed it into the latest trendy design. With an impressive explanation that no one else could even understand, she flattered the general's wife so much that the woman couldn't stop smiling. When the general's wife asked for her name, she glanced at a music album nearby and gave herself the name Seri. After the party, she attached to the general's wife, sweet-talking her and repeatedly calling her sister in the most affectionate tone, asking her to put in a good word for Jung-hyuk. Pleased by the overpraise, the wife happily agreed. The two chatted joyfully, leaving Jung-hyuk waiting miserably outside. To pretend it was just a coincidence, he kept moving his bike back and forth near the entrance. When she discovered he was waiting for her, he stubbornly denied it. She noticed the little cushion he'd thoughtfully placed on the bike seat and decided to try it out. The two of them rode the bicycle along a countryside path, creating a strangely romantic atmosphere. The next morning, she was woken by the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, something Jung-hyuk had gotten up early to prepare for her. Sipping on the coffee she'd been craving for so long, she felt she had nothing to offer in return. So, she pulled out a candy heart from her pocket and gave it to him. Clueless as ever, Jung-hyuk didn't understand its meaning until he consulted a K-drama expert, who explained that it was a confession of love. He brushed it off, but judging by his expression, you could tell he was starting to feel something. Soon enough, his actual fiancée, Seo-dan, appeared at the door. With both his real and fake fiancés present, you might expect an explosive confrontation, but the atmosphere remained surprisingly calm. Jung-hyuk politely greeted Seo-dan, while the slightly awkward Se-ri quickly jumped in to support his story that she was merely part of a secret mission. She then turned to leave. However, Jung-hyuk grabbed her arm and pulled her back to his doorstep before she could wander off. Later, he drove Seo-dan back to Pyongyang, frequently checking the rearview mirror to see if Se-ri had properly closed the door to the house. The engagement between Jung-hyuk and Seo-dan was merely a family arrangement with no real affection involved. When they arrived at her apartment, her uncle personally came down to greet them, worried that Jung-hyuk wouldn't come upstairs. The future mother-in-law had prepared a feast and seized the chance to pressure him into marriage. Meanwhile, back at the village, Se-ri heard a commotion and quickly opened the door. What she saw was a group of concerned village women looking at her with pity. The village women came to comfort Se-ri, mistakenly believing that Jung-hyuk was two-timing her. They assumed that his fiancée, Seo-dan, would be so angry she'd want to twist Se-ri's neck. The women nodded in agreement, and the situation escalated as Jung-hyuk's reputation descended in their eyes. To save his image, Se-ri quickly explained that the engagement was a family arrangement and not his choice. She even romanticized their situation, which successfully restored his standing among the women. The next day, when Jung-hyuk returned home, Se-ri had drawn a boundary line in the house, forbidding him to cross. Her demeanor was like that of an upset wife waiting for her husband who had stayed out late. Se-ri confronted him, saying, "You left at 8 a.m. and should have been back by 2 p.m. at the latest." Jung-hyuk hastily explained that he was late because he had been working on a plan to help her leave the country as an athlete. Feeling a little guilty, Se-ri softened, unaware that he had actually gone to his family the previous night and promised to marry Seo-dan by the end of the year in exchange for his father's help. However, he chose not to share this with her and simply said, "Once you're out of the country, you can go home." To prepare for her trip, Se-ri decided to pawn her limited edition watch, one of only 5 in the world. Despite her attempts to emphasize its rarity and value, the shopkeeper casually tossed it on a scale to weigh it. Se-ri expected it to fetch at least tens of thousands in local currency, but the shopkeeper offered her only 20,000. To make matters worse, a man's belt in the shop was valued at 35,000 won. Apparently, the shop valued items purely by weight. With no other options, Se-ri parted with her treasured watch, grumbling all the while. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk's loyal group of 4 subordinates was captured by Cheol Gang, who tried to extract information about Se-ri's true identity. Despite being subjected to both threats and beatings, the men refused to reveal anything. Beaten and bruised, they were eventually given a simple bowl of ramen, which immediately lifted their spirits. Feeling sorry for them, Se-ri wanted to make it up to the men. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a stack of cash, Jung-hyuk, who was watching, let out a cold scoff, but couldn't hide his growing jealousy. His men, on the other hand, were utterly stunned by her generosity. It was clear that Jung-hyuk's jealousy had reached its peak. He sulked in a corner, throwing his shoe in frustration, frowning silently like a child. Se-ri, planning to leave next day, counter-assassination attempt. A heavily armed truck barreled toward Se-ri's car, and the car doors wouldn't open. As the truck got closer, Jung-hyuk appeared on a motorcycle. Jung-hyuk then performed a daring trick, skidding his motorcycle to block the truck. He leaped off and fired at the truck's gas tank, causing it to explode and stopping it in its tracks. Se-ri quickly ran to him, but a soldier emerged from the truck. Jung-hyuk shielded her and was shot in the process. Despite being injured, he mustered his strength and took out the soldier with a single shot before collapsing into Se-ri's arms. Se-ri drove him to the hospital, ignoring a road sign that pointed to the airport. Her assistant warned her she'd miss her flight home, but she firmly replied, "He risked his life for me. How could I not do the same?" Determined, she chose the hospital. At the hospital, Jung-hyuk was in critical condition, and the blood bank was empty. Without hesitation, Se-ri donated her blood to save him. While he underwent surgery, she found her own photo tucked inside his jacket, proof that this seemingly tolerant man cared deeply for her, even secretly keeping her picture. She recalled how he had refused to take a photo with her, saying, "There's no need for us to miss each other." Yet he had quietly prepared for every danger she might face, from modifying his motorcycle to readying weapons. Thankfully, the surgery was successful, but when Jung-hyuk awoke, he lashed out at Se-ri, seemingly ungrateful. Hurt and unable to explain herself, Se-ri stormed out. Later, a nurse told him that Se-ri had donated blood for him and had been crying in worry. Realizing the extent of her care, he pushed through his pain to find her. When he did, Se-ri scolded him, calling him reckless for walking around while injured. Her tears betrayed her anger, and Jung-hyuk could no longer hold back his feelings. The next day, while the nurse took his temperature, she commented on his flushed face. "Your temperature isn't high, so why is your face so red?" she teased, then added, "By the way, last night, someone was clinging to someone else outside the door, looking all lovey-dovey." As she spoke, Jung-hyuk's blood pressure skyrocketed. The nurse ran to find a doctor, leaving an awkward silence between him and Se-ri. Se-ri quietly placed a newly mended shirt on the table before leaving the room. Jung-hyuk noticed the stitches she had added and couldn't help but smile. Unbeknownst to them, danger was approaching. Cheol-gang was on his way to find them. Cheol-gang, the feared head of the security department, struts into the room. He arrogantly attempts to arrest the man on the bed, but is suddenly stopped when the man's father, the powerful minister of the organization department, arrives. Cheol-gang's arrogance quickly vanishes. Moments later, Seo-dan's mother bursts into the room, panicked. She frantically checks Jung-hyuk's hands and feet, ensuring he's unharmed. Once the elders leave, Jung-hyuk openly tells Seo-dan he has feelings for Se-ri. Seo-dan brushes it off, believing he is just missing Se-ri as she wants to leave, mistaking it for love. However, she insists their marriage will proceed as planned. Angered, Seo-dan decides that getting married immediately will solve everything. She drags her mother to pick out a wedding dress. Her mother, acting mysteriously, takes her to a secret basement. There, Seo-dan stumbles upon an imported fashion magazine, featuring none other than Se-ri. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk realizes Se-ri has disappeared. Through his uncle's connections, he discovers that Se-ri was taken away in a vehicle belonging to the security department's guest house. Unfortunately, the location of the guest house is top secret. Seo-dan confronts Jung-hyuk, demanding answers. "This woman could get you killed. Do you still love her?" At the same time, Seong-jun poses the same question to Se-ri. Jung-hyuk's answer is unwavering. He pushes his weakened body to the limit, searching tirelessly for the hidden guest house. Even as his vision blurs and he nearly falls off a cliff, he presses on, convinced that Se-ri is waiting for him. The next day, Seong-jun and Seo-dan meet. They form an unlikely alliance to break up Jung-hyuk and Se-ri. Seo-dan's motives are understandable, but what about Seong-jun? It's revealed that Seong-jun is a professional scammer who cheated Se-ri's brother out of a fortune. Fleeing South Korea, he sought refuge in North Korea. However, when Se-ri's brother found him, Seung-jun struck a deal to keep Se-ri in North Korea to save his own life. Despite all odds, Jung-hyuk locates a friend at the electricity bureau and traces the power lines, trekking through the forest for an entire day. By nightfall, he finally finds the guest house where Se-ri is being held. Inside, Se-ri is cornered into agreeing to a sham marriage with Seung-jun. Suddenly, the power goes out. Looking out the window, Se-ri sees Jung-hyuk fighting security guards outside. Shocked, she prepares to rush to his aid, but Seung-jun stops her. "Do you really want your love to cost him his life?" Reluctantly, Se-ri steps outside and confronts Jung-hyuk, asking why he came. His first words are about her safety. Tears well up in Se-ri's eyes. Despite her feelings, Se-ri steels herself and lies to Jung-hyuk, claiming she is engaged to Seung-jun, urging him to leave. Jung-hyuk notices the engagement ring on her finger, steps closer, and gently wipes away her tears. He gazes at her, as though engraving her image into his heart, before vanishing into the snowstorm. Left standing alone in the courtyard, Se-ri breaks down, sobbing. Her housekeeper warns her not to follow him, as doing so could endanger Jung-hyuk's life. But Se-ri can't shake the thought of him wandering injured in the freezing cold. Unable to bear the worry, she jumps into her car and chases after him. Thankfully, she catches up. Avoiding eye contact, she lowers her head and quietly asks him to get in the car, silently confirming her love. Jung-hyuk pulls her into a heartfelt embrace. Later, Se-ri, determined to make a meaningful gesture, decides to pawn her engagement ring to buy a watch as a gift for Jung-hyuk. She confidently explains its value to the shopkeeper. Every diamond is crafted with an 8-star and 8-sword design. However, her request for 5 million shocks the shopkeeper, who eventually declines, realizing he couldn't afford the ring even if he sold everything he owned. A clever old woman whispers something to the shopkeeper, and the other women leave with their desired items. Se-ri finally purchases a watch and heads home, excited to gift it to Jung-hyuk. But on her way, 2 men intercept and abduct her. Later, Jung-hyuk receives a heartbreaking call from Se-ri, who tearfully says she's leaving for good and urges him to forget her and move on with his life. Realizing something is wrong, Jung-hyuk immediately springs into action. Se-ri's words echo in his mind, leaving him devastated and momentarily speechless. He tries calling her back, but her phone is turned off. Through the night, Jung-hyuk pushes forward, eventually arriving at the guest house. To his dismay, Se-ri is gone. That evening, Cheol-gang storms into Jung-hyuk's home, flipping over everything in sight. He even destroys the carnation plant that Se-ri had gifted Jung-hyuk. Cheol-gang threatens him, warning that if Jung-hyuk ever finds Se-ri, he will ensure her demise. Jung-hyuk confronts Cheol-gang, leading to a physical fight that lands him in solitary confinement. Meanwhile, it's revealed that Se-ri was kidnapped by none other than Jung-hyuk's father. When Se-ri meets him, she mistakes him for Seo-dan's father because of their similar demeanor. To protect Jung-hyuk, Se-ri takes responsibility for all the events, offering a bribe to the general director. Her bold attempt fails miserably, and she's immediately removed from the scene. The next day, Jung-hyuk's loyal comrades spread rumors that he's the son of the political bureau's general director. The truth causes Cheol-gang's superior to panic and hastily release Jung-hyuk. Jung-hyuk wastes no time rushing home, frantically asking about Se-ri's whereabouts. His father confronts him, questioning if he's willing to sacrifice everything for one woman. Before things escalate further, Jung-hyuk's mother intervenes, bringing Se-ri out of hiding. Their emotional reunion is marked by mutual concern. Se-ri scolds him for getting injured again, while Jung-hyuk apologizes for being late. Se-ri feels she should be the one apologizing, believing she has disrupted his life. The next day, Cheol-gang leads a search of Jung-hyuk's house, but they find nothing. By then, Jung-hyuk has already begun escorting Se-ri toward the border. Despite the journey being only 2 hours, Jung-hyuk deliberately prolongs their time together, wandering until dawn. At the edge of the military demarcation line, Jung-hyuk tells Se-ri she can safely cross and return home. Se-ri hesitates, wanting him to accompany her further, but Jung-hyuk refuses, saying he cannot take even one step beyond. Their farewell is heart-wrenching as Se-ri crosses the border, looking back repeatedly, reluctant to leave. Back in South Korea, Se-ri, previously declared dead, unexpectedly appears at her own funeral. Instead of being angry, she critiques the choice of her photograph. Her sudden reappearance shocks everyone, causing them to drop their drinks and scramble for their phones to capture the moment. Se-ri seizes the opportunity for a marketing coup, declaring her return a cause for celebration. She announces a week-long sale. All products from her company will be half price. Se-ri's return to the public eye marks the beginning of her life getting back on track. But far away in North Korea, Jung-hyuk is consumed by thoughts of her, his longing making him physically weak. Meanwhile, an informant who once worked for Cheol-gang tracks down Jung-hyuk. The informant reveals that his past actions, which led to the latter's tragic death at the hands of Cheol-gang. Recently, the informant discovered his brother's watch, which contained evidence of Cheol-gang's illegal dealings. Overcome by guilt, he gives the watch to Jung-hyuk, hoping to redeem himself. The evidence leads to Cheol-gang's arrest and trial, where he is sentenced to life in prison. However, Cheol-gang taunts Jung-hyuk during the trial, hinting at something he has missed, something that could lead to Se-ri's death. Determined to protect Se-ri, Jung-hyuk digs deeper and uncovers evidence suggesting Cheol-gang had high-ranking accomplices. As expected, Cheol-gang is freed by his allies, and the threat to Se-ri intensifies. The next day, Jung-hyuk finds a newspaper with a photo of Se-ri on his desk, signaling her impending danger. Cheol-gang calls, revealing he is in South Korea and plans to kill Se-ri. In a desperate move, Jung-hyuk risks everything to save her. He embarks on a dangerous 20-hour crawl through a secret mine to reach South Korea. Meanwhile, his father orders a special task force to bring Jung-hyuk back by any means necessary, and the situation becomes increasingly dire. Se-ri, unable to shake the anxiety over the threat to her life, wanders the streets. During one of her walks, she believes she spots Jung-hyuk in the crowd. She thinks it's a hallucination, but to her shock, it's really him. As he approaches, she can hardly believe her eyes. When they embrace, the warmth of his body reassures her that all the fear and uncertainty were worth it. A group of people, using the skills they learned from Korean dramas, try to meet someone in a building but are stopped by security, as they have no appointment. Security calls for backup to verify their identities, forcing the group to retreat. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk, who is mistaken security, is summoned by the Red Mayor. The mayor's associates warn him about the president's quirks. He doesn't like eating with others, prefers eggs boiled to exactly 8 minutes and 27 seconds, and dislikes the color of Jung-hyuk's clothes, though the president has previously said he liked them. Jung-hyuk, feeling somewhat put off, admits that he doesn't understand the president as well as his subordinates do. The next day, Jung-hyuk contacts a local agent who may know Cheol-gang's whereabouts. When he arrives at the address, he is met by a group of thugs. While Jung-hyuk battles the thugs, Se-ri is also in danger. As she reaches the garage, she recalls Jung-hyuk's advice to knock on the car hood to alert any animals hiding underneath. This gesture helps her notice someone inside the car, though she pretends not to see them and runs away. In her haste, she drops his phone. Jung-hyuk calls Se-ri, but Cheol-gang answers, revealing that Se-ri is with him. He threatens that if Jung-hyuk doesn't follow his orders, Se-ri will be killed. The next scene shows a woman sneaking into the security office, locking the door behind her as she hides, avoiding the killers outside. She watches the surveillance footage and sees Cheol-gang's movements. However, Cheol-gang soon realizes she's inside, and he approaches with a gun. As this happens, Se-ri's phone rings, and Cheol-gang picks it up, speaking to Jung-hyuk, warning him that Se-ri is in his hands and demanding he come quickly to save her. Jung-hyuk rushes to the location, but Cheol-gang makes him walk into his firing range. As Cheol-gang prepared to shoot, suddenly all the lights went out. At that moment, Se-ri's voice rang out, calling out a long plan. He mockingly questioned what Jung-hyuk could possibly do, even suggesting that Jung-hyuk wasn't as powerful as he thought. Thinking that a backup had arrived, Cheol-gang immediately fled. Se-ri heard footsteps and decided to check the situation, but someone grabbed him and covered his mouth. It turned out to be Jung-hyuk. The two shared a long, intense gaze, finally breathing easily again. In the next scene, the group reunited with Jung-hyuk, and Se-ri excitedly embraced them. Jung-hyuk watched them with a smile, but when the hug lasted too long, his expression changed. He broke up the group, took Se-ri's hand, and claimed ownership over her. Later, they all gathered for a barbecue, where Jung-hyuk, in a serious tone, urged the group to eat more, piling meat onto Se-ri's plate. This sparked some discontent among the group, as they felt it was unfair that Se-ri was being served all the food. After the joyful meal, Se-ri overheard that Jung-hyuk and the group were leaving. The next day, before Jung-hyuk could say anything, Se-ri tried to act indifferent, walking away casually. But deep down, she was distracted and couldn't focus on work. Meanwhile, as Jung-hyuk and the others left Se-ri's house, Se-ri stood at the door for a long time before finally opening it to find the house empty. Despite preparing herself for this moment, the loneliness hit her hard. Sitting on the floor, Se-ri broke down, no longer the confident figure she usually was. At that moment, the lights suddenly turned on, and the group appeared with gifts. Se-ri was overjoyed to see that Jung-hyuk hadn't left and that someone remembered her birthday. She cried even harder, wiping her tears as she stood up and walked outside. Jung-hyuk immediately chased after her, but Se-ri, still emotional, told him to stay away, claiming she was too upset to face him. Jung-hyuk quickly apologized, but Se-ri clarified that it wasn't about that. It was because she feared that every time her birthday came, she would be reminded of that moment. In that moment, Se-ri found that nothing could be more comforting than a hug. Later, when Jung-hyuk returned to Se-ri's room, he came in with a gift, nervously saying it wasn't a token of commitment and that Se-ri shouldn't overthink it. But when Se-ri opened it, she discovered it was a ring. Se-ri tried it on each finger, finally settling on the thumb and happily saying it fit perfectly. Jung-hyuk explained that the ring was his, revealing they had bought matching rings. Both of them put on the rings, and despite joking about getting married on the spot, the mood was light-hearted and happy. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk's older brother, angered by his father's harsh words, which questioned his worth and ability as a CEO, plotted to have Se-ri killed. To carry out his plan, he told Se-ri that their mother was ill and wanted to see him, while secretly handing over a map to Cheol-gang with instructions to eliminate Se-ri. Though Se-ri had some doubts, she followed the instructions and drove off. Soon, 3 cars appeared, trapping her in a dangerous situation. Se-ri sensed the danger, but the black cars surrounded her, forcing her to stop. A group of thugs with sticks got out of the cars and began attacking Se-ri. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk, unaware of the danger Se-ri was in, arrived at a warehouse to confront Cheol-gang and his men. Cheol-gang, confident of victory, watched as Jung-hyuk remained calm, immediately starting a fight with the thugs without showing any fear. In the midst of the intense battle, Jung-hyuk fought off dozens of attackers. Cheol-gang quickly realized that he had been deceived by Jung-hyuk's brother. A few days earlier, Cheol-gang had threatened Jung-hyuk's family to force him into spying on Jung-hyuk, but Jung-hyuk's brother, determined to protect Jung-hyuk, set up a plan, having Jung-hyuk's brother inform Cheol-gang that Se-ri was on his way, and that the 5-man team would be acting as his bodyguards. When the thugs surrounded Se-ri, the 5-man team made their grand entrance, taking care of the attackers and then rushing to join Jung-hyuk. To ensure they had enough strength for the confrontation, Se-ri called in some more thugs. Enraged, Cheol-gang pulled out a gun, aiming at Jung-hyuk's brother, but Jung-hyuk quickly intervened, kicking the gun away. Amidst the battle, Jung-hyuk grabbed the gun and searched for Cheol-gang. Cheol-gang had taken Jung-hyuk's brother hostage and was using him as a shield. One of the thugs rushed toward Jung-hyuk, allowing Cheol-gang to escape. As Cheol-gang hid behind a car, he pulled out a handgun, loading it and preparing to ambush Jung-hyuk. Unaware of the danger, Jung-hyuk continued searching for Cheol-gang, but Se-ri, watching from a distance, noticed the threat and rushed to protect Jung-hyuk, slamming the car's gas pedal. A bullet hit Se-ri in the process, and Cheol-gang tried to escape. Jung-hyuk, thinking Se-ri was fatally wounded, hurried to his side, holding the unconscious Se-ri in his arms. Overcome with grief, Jung-hyuk believed he had lost everything. The falling snow seemed to mirror his cold, shattered heart. He mourned, screaming in anguish, as he realized Se-ri was his life. At the hospital, Jung-hyuk anxiously waited outside the surgery room, unable to bear the thought of losing Se-ri. He leaned against the wall for support, praying desperately. Fortunately, Se-ri's life was not in danger, but she remained unconscious. Jung-hyuk stood anxiously outside the door, only able to catch glimpses of his unconscious lover whenever the nurses came in and out. However, his right to be by Se-ri's side was taken away by his sister-in-law, who forced him out. Reluctantly, Jung-hyuk stood outside the building all night, gazing up at Se-ri's window. Eventually, Se-ri woke up, and everyone, except for his second brother and sister-in-law, showed visible relief. After standing outside for hours, Jung-hyuk received a call and rushed to Se-ri's side. The moment they met, tears flooded down Jung-hyuk's face. The fear of possibly losing Se-ri overwhelmed him, and he trembled as he scolded Se-ri for putting him through such agony. Se-ri, feeling wronged, complained about being yelled at just after waking up. She slowly opened her arms, both hopeful and a bit hurt, and Jung-hyuk couldn't resist but embrace her. There was no comfort like the warmth of a loved one, and the two held each other tightly. At that moment, the five-man team barged in, and in their excitement, one of them was about to embrace Se-ri, but Jung-hyuk quickly blocked them, sternly reminding them that Se-ri was injured and couldn't be hugged. Despite Se-ri's injuries, Jung-hyuk showed a playful side, teasing his by showing off his own scars. They exchanged a tender moment, but the five-man team once again interrupted, this time joking about Se-ri immediately removing Jung-hyuk's shirt upon waking up. Both men were left speechless, but there was no turning back from their closeness. As Se-ri asked for a drink, Jung-hyuk swiftly grabbed it, insisting it needed to be heated first. He then adjusted the TV for Se-ri and even opened the drink lid for her, continuing his attentive care. His over-the-top nurturing earned him a 5-star rating in Se-ri's eyes, and the level of care he provided was undeniable. The story shifts as Se-ri continues to recover slowly, while Cheol-gang, contrary to expectations, is still alive. He sends an email to North Korea, vowing to bring Se-ri back and bring down Jung-hyuk's father. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk is facing his own turmoil, with the situation spiraling. Just as Cheol-gang aims a gun at him, a flash of light signals the arrival of the National Security Bureau surrounding the area. Cheol-gang sneers, taunting Jung-hyuk, only for a deadly turn of events. In an instant, countless bullets tear through Cheol-gang's body, eliminating the threat. Jung-hyuk is then apprehended, and it is revealed that the five-man team was also arrested. Jung-hyuk, in a bid to protect everyone, takes the fall for the team, claiming that his goal was to align with Se-ri, and that the five-man team was forcibly kept by him. However, as the National Security Bureau reviews the surveillance footage, Jung-hyuk's public demeanor as a gentleman, helping others in moments, casts doubt on his alleged activities. Despite this, Jung-hyuk maintains his version of events, standing firm even in the face of evidence that paints him as an ordinary citizen. The National Security Bureau finds itself in a tough situation as they listen to the contradictory statements of Jung-hyuk and Se-ri. Se-ri, still weak, faces intense questioning, while Jung-hyuk, overwhelmed by the situation, struggles to maintain his composure and looks out the window. Under Se-ri's persistent questioning, he sticks to his story, claiming that he acted to protect her and that he was merely using emotional manipulation to gain her trust. Se-ri, however, doesn't believe him, and his harsh words wound her deeply. The emotional strain causes her to faint, prompting concern from the police, who inform Jung-hyuk. He rushes out, desperate to protect her and stop her from suffering any more pain. Despite his efforts, his words have already hurt her deeply. Meanwhile, the National Security Bureau uncovers Cheol-gang's emails, which reveal the true reason behind Jung-hyuk's mission to South Korea. However, Se-ri's condition worsens. Jung-hyuk is granted permission to visit her at the hospital, where he arrives in a panic. As he enters the room, Se-ri's heart suddenly stops, sending Jung-hyuk into a state of despair. Doctors work frantically to revive her, and after intense efforts, her heart starts beating again. Se-ri's mother, seeing how distressed Jung Hyuk is, convinces the police to let him stay by her side, understanding that Se-ri would want him there when she wakes up. After Se-ri regains consciousness, she learns that Jung Hyuk is about to be sent back to his country. She chooses not to see him again, not wanting him to know the full extent of her illness, fearing it would make it harder for him to leave. Se-ri's mother, touched by Jung Hyuk's dedication, reflects on how he has remained by Se-ri's side through everything. As Jung Hyuk prepares to leave, he casts one last glance toward Se-ri, still longing to be with her, but knowing it's time to part ways. Meanwhile, Se-ri's mother drives to the border. Not long after, Jung Hyuk and his group arrived at the border. Both sides began exchanging hostages. At this moment, Se-ri became emotional. When she saw Jung Hyuk being handcuffed, she ran over frantically. Jung Hyuk shook off the guards, rushed over, and hugged Se-ri tightly. In the end, the two were pulled apart. Jung Hyuk turned around and gave Se-ri a deep, lingering look. This farewell might be forever. Soon after, Jung Hyuk safely returned home. Meanwhile, back in South Korea, Se-ri's second brother and his wife faced their deserved punishment. Back at home, Se-ri looked at Jung Hyuk's note on the refrigerator and the food he had prepared for her. She missed him again. One night, unable to sleep, Se-ri's phone suddenly droned. She immediately sat up. It was a message from Jung Hyuk. It turned out that Jung Hyuk had scheduled the messages to be sent at specific times. From then on, Se-ri received messages from Lee Jung Hyuk at different times each day. Though in separate countries, the two carried out the same routines, basking in the sunlight and gazing at the same sky while thinking of each other. Time passed, and Se-ri's birthday arrived again. But this time, Jung Hyuk's scheduled messages came to an end. In his final message, he told Se-ri, "The flowers I sent you are called snow roses. Let's meet in a country where these flowers bloom." Se-ri understood his message. She immediately began sponsoring a music festival in Switzerland and providing free support to talented pianists, because becoming a pianist was Jung Hyuk's dream. Yet year after year passed, and she still hadn't seen him. To relax her mind, Se-ri went skydiving again. But just like before, her landing didn't go smoothly. As she fumbled with her parachute belts and grumbled about her bad luck, someone approached and offered to help. Startled, Se-ri looked up. It was Jung Hyuk. The two embraced tightly, reunited at last. From then on, every year, Se-ri took 2 weeks off to be with her beloved. Together, they held hands under the table, went on picnics, and enjoyed their time together. And with that, the story concludes. Drop a heart and a like if you love the story, and thank you for following along. See you next time.